Hey guys, today I have an unboxing from the Cubicle. In this package I have MoYu's latest 3x3, the MoYu AoLong V2. And I have to say that this is probably the fastest turnaround I have ever seen in terms of like cubing companies producing cubes, because the MoYu AoLong just came out, I want to say maybe in May, and we already have the V2. And a lot of people are joking that this is because of Felix's would-be world record, his 5.33 second solve that was ruined with a corner twist because he was using a MoYu AoLong. And so MoYu decided to make a new cube that doesn't corner twist. I mean, that's the theory. I'm not necessarily sure if that's true, but it's a good story, so I guess we'll stick with that. I don't know exactly. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and unbox this. I ordered this from the Cubicle, and it got here really fast, so let me move this down real quick so you guys can see. Alright, so there should only be one thing in here, and that is the cube. Alright, so here we have the cube and the Cubicle business card. So here's the box. Yeah, pretty standard. It just says AoLong, so no V2 on it, but, you know, that's okay. So here's Felix. So let's go ahead and unbox this. And here we have the AoLong V2, and right off the bat, I can see that there is some differences between this and the MoYu AoLong V1. So let me go ahead and take this out of the box. Oh, and there we have a little pamphlet. I'll take a look at that later. So here we have the MoYu AoLong V1, and here's the V2, and I can already tell that this thing is very different from the V1, just in terms of how it looks and feels. First of all, this thing is very flat. It doesn't have any bubbliness to it like the AoLong V1 does. It's just very flat, and the stickers are not as glossy. So if we take a look at the AoLong V1, you can tell it's a lot more rounded, and it has that bubbly feeling. So that's the first thing I noticed. And secondly, the stickers are not as glossy. I mean, the stickers, it doesn't matter as much because those can be replaced, but that's just the first thing that I noticed. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and go into some first turns. Alright, so here we go. Oh my goodness. Okay, this thing really needs some work right now. This thing is terrible. Oh wow. This thing is really bad out of the box. I'm not sure if it's just mine, but this thing is really bad. One thing I can say is that the turning at this point feels very different from this cube. This cube out of the box had a very, very small scratchy feeling, a very slight scratchy feeling, but it also had sort of a smooth, bumpy, or smooth bubbliness to it. And this cube, it has, the scratchy feeling is a little bit more prominent, but because this thing is tensioned as poorly as it is, it feels very tight. I guess I should mention that this thing feels very tight, like the tensions are very tight, and it feels very scratchy, but it's barely turnable. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go tension this right now. So the main thing about this cube though, before I do go tension this, is the corner twisting. That was the one thing that they said was the one major improvement, was that they were going to make a V2 because the V2 wouldn't corner twist. So I don't know if it still will, but we will see. So I'm going to go ahead and go tension this real quick because it's really bad right now. Okay, so I am back. I just tensioned this cube and it does feel a lot better, but when I first took it out of the box, it felt very slow and sluggish, and that feeling is still there. So I think that's just a characteristic of this puzzle. Anyway, but it feels a lot better now that it's tensioned, but it still feels not as fast and still a little bit sluggish. Now, one thing I forgot to mention when I unboxed it is that this cube is very dry. It's extremely dry. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and compare these two. So I'm going to take them both apart and compare the pieces, because MoYu did say that they were making some changes to these cubes. So I'm going to go ahead and take these two apart. So let me take this out. And let me take this out. Alright, so let's start with the corners, or maybe we'll just start here. Alright, so here's the insides. They basically look exactly the same, pretty much. I think they are basically exactly the same. So let's look at the corners real quick. So here's the corners. The only thing I can tell that's different is they made this part here, the little dip, a lot bigger on the V2. That's the only difference that I can see so far. Other than that, it looks pretty much exactly the same. The only other difference besides that is that this cube, the AoLong V2, is flatter than this one, so this one is a bit more rounded, but the only major difference is that this part right here, the little dip here, is bigger. on the V2. Let's take a look at the edges. I don't think they changed anything on the edges, but we'll take a look anyway. No, they pretty much look exactly the same. The edges do. Alright, so the only difference they really made was they made this puzzle flatter. They took away some of the roundness. And they made the little dip here a lot bigger. Alright, so there's both cubes. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do some solves with this. Just to try it out. And then I'm going to give you guys my final opinion as of right now of this cube. Alright, so I'll see you guys in... Alright, so I just did about 50 or so solves on this cube, and I didn't get a single corner twist, but I have heard other people say that they have gotten corner twists with this cube already, so I know that I eventually will. Now that's okay, except for the fact that MoYu did say that this cube would fix the corner twisting problem that the AoLong had. Now, in all honesty, I only had about 3 or 4 corner twists on the AoLong version 1, and it didn't bother me that much, but I understand why MoYu wanted to make a version 2. Alright guys, so I've had this cube now for about 3-ish days. It's now Wednesday. I got this cube on Monday. So I've had about 3 days to mess around with it. And so I think I'm ready to give my final first impressions of this cube. So out of the box, this cube, it was very sluggish and it had a very prominent scratchy feeling. It was also very dry, which I think is what helped make that scratchy feeling feel more prominent. Mine was also tensioned very tightly, so it was kind of difficult for me to turn. But tensioning is something that can be solved pretty easily. Although one thing I do have to say is that tensioning this cube was a little bit tricky because it was kind of hard to find the sweet spot on this cube. So the best way to describe this cube, I think, is that it feels very flat and cubic. And the turning on this cube is somewhat scratchy, it's dry, and it's a little bit more clickier than the AoLong version 1, which is very smooth. This cube is also somewhat sluggish. I think it's much slower than the version 1. And the corner cutting on this cube, I think I didn't talk about it, but the corner cutting on this cube is somewhat lacking. It can't really do line to line. It can do less than line to line just fine, but once you do get to line, it kind of has a hard time doing it. So that's basically it for this cube. Overall, I think it's an okay cube, but in all honesty, I'm not a huge fan of it, and I don't think it's worth the money to go and buy this cube. If you already have the AoLong version 1, then just stick with that one. I think that cube is just fine. The only reason why you may want to switch to the V2, or at least try out the V2, is if you do not like the bubbly feeling on the version 1 at all. This cube has no bubbly feeling at all. If you do not have a version 1 or a version 2 and you're looking to get an AoLong, I would highly suggest getting the version 1 while you still can. I'm not exactly sure how much longer the V1s are going to be in stock, but I imagine that once they are sold out, they might be a little bit hard to get a hold of. Alright guys, that is it for this unboxing. In this video, I unboxed MoYu's latest 3x3, the MoYu AoLong version 2. I pre-ordered this puzzle from the Cubicle, I think maybe a week ago, and they shipped it this past Friday. It is now Monday, and I just received this puzzle in the mail. So, as always, very fast shipping from the Cubicle. Now, this puzzle costs $16 on the Cubicle website. You could probably find it for cheaper on other websites, but if it's anything like the AoLong version 1, it won't be that much cheaper, but cheaper is cheaper. So, there you go. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!